Got a Prezzo.
Oh, yeah, so we didn't.
Uses Prezzo.
How's that? I don't know that.
Yep.
Anybody use Prezzo? We didn't take a vote on anything for the capital improvement plan last month.
Yeah.
Remember, we considered it.
I guess.
We considered it from afar.
Council says, oh, you'll-
All right, we are all set.
Okay, great. If everybody's ready. The City of Ypsilanti Planning Commission meeting is in session. Can we get a roll call for attendance, please?
Yeah, Commissioner Dunwoody,
Present.
Commissioner Simmons, Commissioner Davis Jr., Commissioner Hollyfield,
Present.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Shear,
Present.
Commissioner Jones Chance,
Present.
Commissioner Marin, Commissioner Woodring.
Present.
Have a quorum.
Very good. A motion would be in order to excuse the absence of Commissioner Simmons.
So move.
Motion by Phil, support by Michelle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have next on the agenda approval for this evening's agenda. Any comments or questions on the agenda prior to, you look like you have something to say?
Yes, Bonnie said that she'd be willing to go after 9:15 West Michigan.
Okay. Very good. So we have a recommendation to move the item A under old business after item B. Any other questions or concerns on the agenda?
I think our audience is here for item C. Is it worth moving that up?
Most of them are here for item C, yeah.
You want to move item C first under old business? CBA?
CBA. Bonnie willing to go after 2.
Bonnie's got all kinds of time. Motion would be in order to approve the agenda as noted.
So move. Support.
Motion by Greg, support by Brian. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have next approval of our minutes from the May 21st meeting. Any comments or questions on the minutes presented in tonight's packet? Motion would be in order to approve.
Move to approve. Or.
Motion by Brian, support by Phil. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have next public comment. This is the portion of the planning commission meeting set aside for comment to the planning commission on any items for which there will not be a public hearing this evening. The only item with a public hearing is the 915 West Michigan special use and site plan amendment. With that,
That wouldn't be a public hearing since we did the public hearing last month.
oh, very good. Thank you for correcting me. So there are no items on the agenda that will have a dedicated public hearing. So this will be the first of only 2 chances to comment to planning commission, this and then prior to the closing of the meeting. With that introduction out of the way, a motion would be in order to open the public comment.
So moved.
Motion by Brian, support by Amanda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll start with folks in the room. If you want to step up to the microphone if possible and just start with your name, we're going to try to limit comments to 3 minutes apiece.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Gary Smith. I reside at 324 Hillcrest Boulevard. I am currently a member of Metropolitan Memorial Baptist Church located at 431 Hawkins Street. We were made aware at the zoning board appeals meeting that we were in a residential 1 area, zoning area, which restricts our church from having an electronic messaging board. What I would like to know from the Planning Commission, what would you consider us having the opportunity to have electronic messaging board? What are the nuisance that the Planning Commission sees as being a deterrent having these signs? That's my first question. Second of all, we want the sign in order to be able to communicate to the neighboring community as well as those that travel up Hawkins as a shortcut from going down Hamilton or coming through all the way through Michigan Avenue. The typical way is either do First Avenue or Hawkins to Harriet to get to the expressway. So we have an opportunity to allow the community to see what is going on in the community as it involves Metropolitan Memorial Baptist Church. We want this sign. We believe it would be a great asset to not only the church, but the surrounding community. The company that we have looked at having do the work in erecting the sign complies with all of what we know, what they know, and what we know to be considered in compliance. There was also mentioned at the last meeting that we were here on June the 2nd, there was an email from one resident that talked about light dust. Not sure how that impacts a person when the sign is offset from the street and it's 3-foot candles of light emitting. Okay. So
That's
just would like to know
Timer.
what we need to do in order to get this sign approved. Okay,
Very good. Thank you.
thank you.
You can use that one as well.
Either one.
President, and to the members on the panel, and our guests and pastor. My name is Tyrone Hampton. I live at 4706 Sycamore Drive. And I came here as a concerned member of I work in the church, but as a concerned member of the church. And I look at the history of the church, and I don't want to call it a travesty, but that sounds like what happened. The church was there prior to the rezoning. It was a commercial. They made it a residential area. The church was there 1926. Then in 1953, it changed its name. The church was still there. Then in 1951, it changed the name as it exists today prior to the residential one reassignment, which pushed the church out. And that would be considered a grave injustice in law if we're going to do it right, to allow this commercial edifice to have those features that are custom to churches today. So in saying that, let us look at what may happen 50 years from now. So as members here in government, you have to look up the road when you make laws, rules, and regulations. You look up the road and see how does it affect the community or the people that it's supposed to guide. And I only ask and that you please review that as it relates to the changing times and how things are going. We can't stop AI. They didn't have computers and TV and all of that stuff back who knows how many years ago, but they didn't make and outlaw certain rules and regulations so it couldn't be. So I'm just asking you to please consider it at this point as not only an officer in the church, but as a member in the church. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the commission. I'm Ronnie Peterson, live at 6060 Vista Drive. I was born in this city just a few streets away, and I'm very proud of the city and very proud to, let me say, be a supporter of this town. I served on this council when much of the rezoning was taking place some years ago in terms of throughout the city, but particularly the South End, the first ward where I represented. There were strong concerns then for me, and I shared it with them, in terms of we dealt with rezoning because many of the institutional, buildings and structures and organization existed was not taken in consideration on rezoning because they don't feel that they were impacted by it. So when you had the residential changes from duplex to and tripleplex and some fourplex, they were affected. But many of them was somewhat what you considered was red circled in, unless they were sold or, let me say, remodeled in some kind of form or fashion. And then they would have to go back to R1. Here, I think no one took in consideration the institution of places of worship. And unfortunately, we who served and those who serve now have not taken much consideration of those who have historical values in the community, no matter what it is, whether it's a place of worship or whether it's an activity that exists there that benefits the community or help the community strive to serve those in need or those who offer recreational opportunities. And many times when you did with replanning and rezoning, you took some of those in consideration, not only here, but across the state. I think, unfortunately, the church was silenced. The church did not deliberate, and I don't think they have ever deliberated because they never thought they would be considered by some plan that would limit their ability to signage and signage change. And anyone knows that signage have changed various. They're using Here and Sign, that was the name of the company before, years ago, and they fostered in this community and born in this community and grown into a large sign company. No one took it in consideration that we would have the signage opportunities you have now to advertise or to promote or to share various programs that goes in the places of worship or other facilities that need signage changing. So I don't think it'll stop here. I think others will be deliberating on this issue. I think they're more interested in chair and let me say members of the commission, you give them some guidance on how they can appeal beyond, not appeal to the process of the zoning board of appeal, but let me say appeal to this planning commission or the legislative body, the council, on how we can address this issue. And I think the issue is not just places of worship, because several places of worship, I think, is just waiting to come down here and have the same discussion because the signage have changed, promotion have changed, as you well know. And our sign, I think it was there before I was born. That sign is in front of that church. And that ain't ancient ago, but it's been a while ago. And unfortunately, no one took a look at the changing some years ago. But now we're in a dilemma that we hope that this planning commission, and I know you only take public comments, but I think you allow the opportunity of us to work with staff to come back with you, along with others who share the same concern about future being able to promote their activities at a place of worship or their community organization or what exists in the community. Many of them were there. This church was there before many of the houses was there. So I hope you give us some guidance tonight on what's the next steps we could take to approach either the council or this commission to help us address this issue. Thank you for your time and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Any other speakers in the room? Do we have anybody on Zoom?
We have one. They're here for one of the items. Like
Okay.
9:15.
If anybody on Zoom wishes to comment, you can raise your hand and we will unmute you. But if you're an applicant for one of the other old business items, then you will get an opportunity to speak later.
They haven't raised their hand.
Seeing no other hands in the room, a motion would be in order to close the public comment.
So moved.
Or
Motion by Brian, support by Phil. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Before we jump into committee reports, I want to talk about responses to a couple of the questions or actions posed in the public comment. We'll talk about some lighting issues under the dark sky compliance ordinance, but not specific to any one property or parcel. So we'll address some of that individually here. When this commission reviewed the electronic message board regulations to determine where and how electronic message boards could be allowed within the city, residential was ruled out. R1 residential is a zone in which electronic message boards are not allowed. I think generally when we talked about the allowance of those, we talked about a couple of nuisances. This is to Gary's question first. One of those nuisances I think has been that was heavily discussed was just light pollution. One of those was specifically distracting to drivers for signs that are meant to caught the attention of passersby. Those are kind of the two most prominent. Does anybody on the commission, am I forgetting anything from that discussion that would be relevant to Mr. Smith's question? Those are the two main nuisances then, I think we can agree generally, that we're looking to work around. That doesn't mean that there's not a place for electronic message boards ever, but that's the balance that we're trying to strike as a commission. Interesting question about how we can address this issue to Mr. Peterson's question. The current zoning ordinance rules out electronic message boards in the R1 residential zone. R1 residential is primarily residential. That is its definition in the, I have the zoning ordinance in front of me. Let's see what the zoning ordinance says about the definition for R1. R1 is designed to provide an environment of predominantly low-density, single-family detached dwellings along with related facilities such as schools and religious institutions. Religious institutions and schools, both there in the definition. Religious institutions are allowed by special use in that zone, and so there are institutions that we'll see by right and by special use in R1. I think the question that we maybe need to consider as a commission, just kind of speaking for my own opinion here, is whether we're opposed to electronic message boards in residential zones or whether we're opposed to electronic message boards for residential uses. For a zone that is allowed to have institutions, I think that's probably worth something that we could visit with staff and consider again, perhaps in a future meeting. Maybe we want to look into how we might shape that for non-residential uses in the R1 zoning district. The action, I think, if there were to be an action that resolves that, I think that is an amendment to the zoning ordinance that explicitly notes that electronic messages boards currently aren't allowed in R1. So that is, we could work with staff ultimately on proposed language to revise the zoning ordinance. That's something that Planning Commission will take up in future discussion. What did I miss from the public comment? Do any commissioners have anything else that they'd like to share in response to the questions or comments we heard this evening? Okay, very good. Thanks everybody for the input. For the time being, we're going to go to the next item on the agenda, which is the committee report. We don't have Commissioner Davis Jr. here to speak to the non-motorized advisory committee. I don't know, Josh or anybody else plugged in on anything that needs to be shared with Planning Commission right now.
Yeah, so the non-motorized advisory committee did not meet last
Okay.
month, or this month, so there isn't really an update. We did meet with Dylan to kind of discuss how the committee could be a little bit more involved in communications in the future. We met with those who are in like the communications department, just kind of to discuss that a little bit. The final thing is that we have a reappointment for Joe Montgomery on the agenda tonight.
We have that later in the agenda, right? Not
Yes.
The committee reports. Okay,
Mhm.
very good. Given that there wasn't a meeting, I don't know if there's other questions for Josh to relay about non-motorized advisory committee. Anything from other commissioners?
I do go to those meetings and the focus has been expanding communications for the past couple meetings, so that.
Okay, we'll stay tuned. Item, excuse me, 7 on the agenda for presentations. We have nothing this evening. We'll jump right to item 8 and old business. Per the modifications to the agenda, we're going to start with what is labeled item C in the packet, the dark sky compliance ordinance. Josh, I'll turn it over to you for staff presentation.
That'll show up. Yeah, so there weren't a ton of modifications made to the language. I did specify that, specify interior lighting that is designed to be seen from the exterior is also included as part of these regulations. And I made that change also right here where it's highlighted. I don't know if it's that easy to see on the screen. Hopefully that's easier. One of the discussion points I did want to talk about is, we discussed seasonal lighting, and there was like the comment of like, we could permit it if it complies with the regulations, like regulations in the proposed ordinance. However, one of the ordinance requirements are, some of the requirements are like full cutoff, directed downwards, and fully shielded. And oftentimes, seasonal lighting does not fully comply, with those standards. And so I was wondering if the Planning Commission wanted to reconsider that language, and maybe potentially exempt seasonal lighting from this provision just overall, because it would be really hard to enforce all seasonal lighting in the city and make sure that complies with every section of this zoning ordinance, because it just most times does not.
Be a really awkward Christmas tree lighting here.
Well, yeah, and we talked about seasonal lighting was among those things where we talked about, string lighting at businesses or something like
Mhm.
that. It doesn't feel like it is a part of any sort of light pollution or nuisance that is a problem in those downtown areas, especially where we have those businesses with outdoor uses. The seasonal lighting feels kind of the same way. One of the things that was mentioned for string lighting is that it won't be enforced. And I think the same thing is true of seasonal lighting. There is some amount of this that a string of lights on a tree is not fully shielded, but it will not be enforced. And we kind of know that. I think that we have a bit of an obligation to not like create unenforceable regulations.
Yeah.
And so I think the answer for me at least, and speak up other commissioners if you feel differently. I think that an exception on a fully shielded lighting requirement for seasonal lighting is reasonable.
So do you believe that where it has, it's 122-609B1C, where it says seasonal or ornamental lighting that complies with the standards established in this ordinance, that's one of the exceptions, but do you think just taking out the language of that complies with the standards related established in this ordinance and just having seasonal or ornamental lighting?
Say the section where you're proposing the change one.
122-609B1C.
Okay. While I reread that, if anybody else has a quick answer to Josh, feel free to speak up.
I think that makes sense to me, is essentially just saying that we're not going to do any enforcement on seasonal lighting, which I think is kind of where it seems like things are going.
What's seasonal lighting?
Um,
Boy.
we do have it defined in the proposed language. Seasonal lighting, also known as holiday lighting, refers to temporary lighting displays associated with a holiday or cultural events.
So really anytime.
Yes.
I mean, I used to have a neighbor that had something out like every month. Sure, let's run it.
But yeah, and I think Brian brings up an interesting point, is that like if there's an exception that is tied to a holiday or cultural event, that you can find an infinite number of reasons to justify seasonal lighting. And if it's not fully shielded, then that's a loophole through kind of what is otherwise a dark sky compliance ordinance. I just don't know if it's a loophole that feels particularly vulnerable, right? Like, I don't know.
I wouldn't believe so. I mean, even if we change this language tomorrow, the likelihood of us seeing all of a sudden the entire city just like, like in Rochester where they just
Right.
have all of the, like we're probably not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that we either have that loophole or we have this sort of onerous, unenforceable seasonal lighting language. Neither of those is perfect, but I don't feel like the loophole is particularly threatening.
You could staple them to a sheet of plywood,
Is there,
message board of sorts.
is there, sorry, I didn't quite catch the entire definition, but is there any stipulation that is some amount of temporary amount of time? I think that's probably would close the loophole for most instances, right? Where you're not going to keep it up for more than a couple months.
It just references, you know, temporary lighting displays. In our ordinance, it's really discretionary in terms of when something is defined as temporary. Usually, something that's temporary can't exceed more than 3 months. You know, like a temporary sign or a temporary use. Staff can approve 2 temporary use or temporary sign permits administratively every year, and then the planning commission would have the 3rd one. So it was essentially 3 months, but it's not explicit.
I don't know if I would even consider this a loophole. I would just consider it discretionary.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what the city attorney would say. Probably not much.
Yeah, probably not.
Bingo.
I think that's enough of an answer on seasonal lighting, yeah. Very good.
So moving along, the defined glare, you know, so glare means excessive brightness from a light source that causes visual impairments or discomfort. Does anybody want to propose anything else, or are we all comfortable with that definition?
I feel like we need to define discomfort. I mean, I don't like subjective. I mean, anyone can use that. I mean, it's
Yeah, I think we can get a much clearer definition of glare. I'm going to email you one right now.
Okay. All right. In the meantime, then, are there any other terms that any you guys think that need to be defined?
let's see, we did the banner thing last time.
Not hearing anything.
Okay. And then minor changes done to temporary mobile food establishments. And I realized I put temporary mobile food establishments again. That's supposed to be temporary mobile health care. So I can make that amendment, but they both literally say the same thing just for 2 different uses. But essentially it should comply with section 122.609. And then moving forward to sign design standards, building mounted signs were the only was the only section of the sign ordinance that like regulated illumination, sign illumination. There you'll see like there is a added to the banners, even though I did find in the definition of banners that banners are seen as temporary signs, but that was also just added down here since we're already opening the language. And then have the electronic message board sign language up still. And then for sign illumination, I kept it kind of simple. Or I did keep it simple. And I was wondering if the planning commission wants to revisit this. I looked at the standards that were in Chelsea's ordinance that you sent, Michelle. You know, and I thought like the you know, illumination using exposed or bare bulbs is prohibited, but you know, Chelsea allowed it for theater marquees, and there was something else, and I forget what it was, but I didn't think it applied to our city at that point. I just don't remember what it was.
Bare bulbs were allowed on something else besides marquees.
Yes, I think.
Better not be.
So the current ordinance says nothing about sign illumination.
Other than in building mounted, which I did propose like clearing that language and just having it comply with 122.609.
Sure.
So by default, that would illuminate, that would prohibit like backlighting, light fixtures would have to be, or illumination would have to be fully shielded, color temperature maximum.
So I think this kind of like, what does it mean for sign illumination to avoid adverse impacts on the night sky? Right? Does that mean fully shielded? Because then like, I think this is
Yeah.
kind of the question that we talked about with that, the bank discussion in our May meeting. How do you
Mhm.
light a monument sign?
Yeah. Which I know a lot of times it tends to just be internal illumination. I know you also have backlighting, and in other communities you do see uplighting. And again, this was just proposed as part of being fully dark sky compliant, but I'm open to other considerations from the Planning Commission. If that is not the route that the Planning Commission wishes to take.
Well, B is the part with the teeth, and A is not going to guide any review of a sign application, right? I'm
sorry?
looking under general, we're
Uh-huh.
talking about sign illumination standards, right?
Yes.
I'm looking under general A and B. I mean, B is what you're going to use when you're reviewing sign permits, presumably, right?
Mhm.
Not A.
Yeah.
So do we even need A?
Not really. No. Because it's already in 122.609.
Well, so you mentioning that it's mostly internally illuminated, I think is an interesting thought because that also won't be dark sky compliant, right? It won't be fully shielded.
It's internally
Yeah.
illuminated?
If it's internally illuminated,
It can be fully shielded if they put something on the top of the sign that goes out.
Yeah.
so
It'll be like recessed.
Hmm.
okay. I'm having a hard time picturing it.
And a lot of eyebrows.
Well, I mean, I mentioned this in the May meeting. Uplighting a monument sign doesn't feel like a problem that is worth ruling out in the ordinance. And like I think I was kind of alone on that a bit in May, or maybe not alone, but certainly in the minority on that in May. I think that uplighting of monument signs feels like a problem that isn't a problem. And I mean, I think that the dark sky compliance ordinance is, it is a noble goal, right? And I think we have a lot of work to get from like where we are currently with public lighting to a dark sky compliant lighting environment. Lighting of a monument sign doesn't feel to me like it is like it is a major factor in us reaching that goal. As much as it feels like it is a factor in the places that we allow to have signs anyway, being able to communicate their messages. That's kind of where I'm at on like uplighting signs. Because if there was a way to like have fully shielded exterior illumination or external illumination on a monument sign, I could be compelled. But I know we kind of tried to imagine that in some of our May discussion, and I'm not sure that it exists.
I think there are any number of hard to see externalities associated with any type of uplighting. And there are downward directed lights that are available for monument signs. And that is far less likely to create a nuisance to someone. Maybe they're living in the fourth,
Mhm.
half 4-story apartments here, where there's, a monument sign just below on the ground.
Yeah, so I guess my thinking is that that's ruled out by some of the like adverse impacts on adjacent properties, but your thought there is that you would rather rule it out. You would rather rule it out than allow it to become a nuisance that is then enforced.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know that I agree, but
That's okay.
I think I just see value in lighting of monument signs and like I mean unless there is a compelling case to be made that there are other like good options for lighting these monument signs that are available, it feels onerous. See how quickly Brian can Google it. Anybody else? Phil, any thoughts? Carl, you've been quiet over there.
I just think I agree with you if you're saying that we're just getting started on the lighting issue. To me, less is more. And after a certain hour, none is acceptable. In other words, if you're talking about a dark sky, at a certain hour, you shut your lights down. And I think that lighting can be controlled so that it becomes less intrusive at other hours of the night. So I agree, yes, we're just getting started.
And so recess numbers.
So for the purpose of this meeting, you need our input on sign illumination, and I think generally folks on the commission seem to not have any concern with the prohibition, right? It sounds like there is a question about whether item 1A is necessary, given that item 1B exists. And requiring it to comply with the provisions established in 122-609 would rule out anything that is uplit.
Mhm.
Yeah. Unless we make an exception. Yes.
Which in 122-609, there is an exception for highlighting ornamental features of a building with uplighting, but obviously a sign isn't a building.
Right.
But that is like the only exception for uplighting in the present ordinance.
What's that?
Some of these are so subjective. Like, what's an ornamental feature? Like, anyone whose house has can put up lights on them, but you can't put it on a monument sign. Seems a little nutty to me.
I'm gonna see if we have that in our definitions.
Yeah, I think that's like
Yeah,
seeing this in the ornamental lighting for ornamental lighting of a building or landscape. It feels to me like monument sign belongs in that group. I think kind of coming back to that language, like the thing I'm saying about monument sign, that I think that it is helpful for them to be seen, you know, at a certain hour, like with all the restrictions that would otherwise exist in section 122-609. I don't see a world in which like ornamental uplighting of building features and landscaping is like okay in a way that monument signs are not okay.
Well, trees and ornamental features can go higher than 6 feet, and a monument sign's gonna be low to the ground.
Hmm.
So there's a difference, but then they also ornamental sign, or sorry, monument signs have a top, and you can have a light directed on them. So we're not saying that monument signs, we wouldn't be saying that monument signs can't be lit. We're just restricting the uplighting.
Also, the definition of ornamental, it is listed, I lost my train. The definition of ornamental listed as not designed for illumination, which is different than a sign that is meant to be read, in my opinion. I think by that definition, that's the difference. Primarily.
Used to illuminate architectural or landscape features from below. So let's say I've got an old Greek revival house with some columns out front. I can just blast them.
it's no more than 3,000 Kelvin in color temperature and 400 lumens.
Well, that's what's the part that seems strange to me. We feel that we have limited in such a way uplighting in other instances, but can't use it for monument signs, of which we have very few anyway, because they're not allowed in most places.
They're not allowed in the center district. They're allowed in every other district. By the way, Commissioner Simmons requested to speak.
Oh, is he on?
Yes.
Yeah, unmute him, would you?
Yes. Or I have to.
Michael, can you hear us?
Hello?
Hey.
Hi.
Hey, I did this whole big spiel to you guys about my apologies for not attending. So you missed it. But at any rate, I'm gonna have to piggyback off Michelle. There is a difference between ornamental and monumental signs, as far as I'm concerned. And ornamental things are not something that will stay around for any permanency. Because ornamental signs, as far as I'm concerned, is like Christmas or Halloween, or they're putting some of that on their building or whatever. And then I'm gonna have to piggyback off Michelle again as far as the height of the monumental sign versus that or the ornamental, because I can't see any ornamental signs being, let me say, if I will, non-compliant with the black sky. And right now, my opinion to that, good effort though. I appreciate that, Joshua, for putting that together. But there needs to be, to me, because I just joined, and in my opinion, I'm gonna have to treat the two separate.
Sorry, clarify for us what the two are. The two are monument signs and building features.
I thought we were discussing ornamental. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. I think we are kind of discussing ornamental lighting and ornamental features. I'm just curious because you said you need to distinguish between the two, and I wasn't clear on what the two were.
Ornamental
Yeah.
lighting versus that of monumental lighting.
Okay. Very good. Thanks for that. And I do want to note, I know you said you just jumped on. We talked about seasonal lighting and holiday lighting a bit, which gets a separate section in the proposed text. And so you mentioned Christmas and Halloween there. I do want to note that when we talk about ornamental lighting, we are not talking about seasonal holiday lighting. We're talking about uplighting of landscape or building features. So I think back to the rest of the commission then. You know, I think we have a decision to make about whether we think that monument signs belong with like building and landscape uplighting. I tend to think they do, but for the purpose of Josh having to draft some language here for the proposed text, I wonder if we might just give him a person by person indication of which way we would prefer for that to be drafted. Phil, do you want to start?
That would be so different.
I don't have a particular problem with uplighting. I can see the advantages of, you know, the intents of having downlighting where necessary, but if we're going to allow uplighting of a building, I think the two should be combined. I just seen the new sign in Belleville, monument sign, and it's uplit, and it doesn't appear to be a nuisance. You know, I drive by it regularly, and I don't have a problem with it. I beg the difference, you know, on the whole dark sky, you know, flying in at night, you know, it's like, I'm not seeing it, you know, the impact, but I do appreciate the effort. So as far as I'm concerned, the two can be combined.
Okay, for my part, I think, you know, I'm good with monument signs being included in that uplighting exception.
Yeah, I'd be okay with monument signs being included, or swapping monument signs for ornamental uplighting. It feels like ornamental uplighting is more of a nuisance than monument signage, to me.
Amanda?
I don't have a huge opinion on whether or not you put them together. But I do think that we would need to change definitions a little bit.
Change the definition of,
What does that mean?
like, change the definition of like ornamental, like uplighting, or,
I mean, if we're putting it together, right now, ornamental says that it's not primarily used for illumination, but I
Mm.
can't imagine a sign not being, lighting on a sign
Mhm.
is primarily for illumination
Yeah.
of the sign.
Okay, okay. Um, I could also write, um, keep that language of ornamental uplighting, but include another definition or part of the ordinance that, would permit the monument sign uplighting, but also have like additional requirements, whether it's like it can only be angled, at a certain degree, or um, you know, I, there's a few things I could consider with that. But yeah.
We'll come back to that. Michelle?
Yeah. For the sake of consensus, I would say that if there is a way to, like you said, have a standard for the degree at which it and something with light trespass as well, maybe specific to uplighting, since it's not as much of a concern for everywhere else that we're not permitting uplighting, then I would be comfortable with it.
Yeah, I tend to agree that it seems a little odd to separate the ornamental and the sign lighting. I do think in the spirit of the dark sky compliance, we probably shouldn't allow either. But at the same time, it's not, I think, the largest issue in the world. And considering we're still going to be dealing with DTE's lighting, I'm not sure how much of a difference it's going to make.
Carl?
My impression was there were two choices when you started.
There were, weren't there?
And it's all been modified. What are the two choices?
I think fundamentally what Josh needs to know for the drafting of the proposed text is going to be whether you are okay with including uplighting of monument signs along with uplighting of building features and landscaping.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else under the sign illumination?
That was easy.
Oh, hey, Michael, I'm going to ask that Josh mutes you. If you have something to add later,
That's
in the
fine.
free to
Thank
raise
you.
your hand and we can chat.
I'm good with that.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned, just to clarify, that you would like to move the electronic message board discussion as to where it's permitted to a later meeting.
Yeah, so the electronic message board sign, you have existing language in here.
Yes.
But I know you also included some notes.
Yes.
Wait, what's this one?
Sorry, I'm
Oh,
just
okay,
looking
okay.
at just above where that sign illumination bit is in our packet is the carried through language for the electronic message board sign existing language. So I suppose we have a lot of discussion here for the dark sky compliance ordinance and I was imagining that that's separate from the electronic message board ordinance since it is kind of two separate issues. But I don't mind jumping into that now if that suits the commission. Well, I think we can be brief. Since it's not really a part of the dark sky compliance, I want to spend a few minutes on this so we can kind of plan our next steps. But we'll try to move on from electronic message boards to get back to the agenda as planned. My question for the commissioners, and I think this is whoever has strong feelings on it, we don't have to go person by person necessarily. But the question that I would ask is whether you individually think that it is important to rule out electronic message boards in R1 residential zones or just for residential uses.
It seems to make sense just for residential uses. I don't think we should have R1 zones to begin with, but it makes sense that it just be for residential uses, given that a lot of these other uses are, predate the zoning changes and, they have a different function.
Hmm.
And I would find it hard to say that, where most churches are located is very different from where, for example, Second Baptist is located, where we do allow a sign. I don't think the nuisance is any greater. I don't think schools and churches, for example, are going to be blaring huge lights in a way that it's going to be a problem, considering how we've already regulated them in C and mid, or not C and mid, but yeah, wherever they were. I'm
The neighborhood district.
not my best right now. I'm a little tired.
I disagree a bit. Not in the like practice of one particular case that we're talking about, but in the thought of like if there's a church in an R1 directly across the street from someone's home, it could be a nuisance to have electronic message boards glaring into their windows. So like from the theoretical perspective of like not thinking about any particular instance.
Yeah, but, just a question, do you think we have addressed that in the existing limitations on electronic message boards? Because we do allow them across the street from residences.
Yeah, right now, I think the bid in our packet says where it is permitted in the following districts, and it's all for non-residential uses, but that is in core neighborhood single family, it's in core neighborhood mid, it's in core neighborhood, it's in center, it's in the historic corridor, it's in the neighborhood corridor, and it's in the general corridor. And so we have a lot of like residential and mixed use residential zones in which electronic message boards are allowed for non-residential uses. The only one that is accepted is R1.
I think the existing limitations are sufficient.
I agree with that. Reading this, the hours of 9 PM and 6 AM, they have to be off for. That seems like it pretty reasonably deals with any concerns I would have.
Commissioner Simmons has his hands up.
Oh, yeah, we can unmute Michael if he wants to share again.
Hello?
Hey,
To me, it's almost like you can't separate the two because they both deal with lighting. Um,
when you say the two, I hate to ask this question again. When you say the two, you're talking about electronic message boards and dark sky lighting?
that's exactly what we're speaking
Okay.
of.
Okay, great.
To me, you can't eliminate the two because they both concern the issue of lighting. Now, if we want to get more technical and start to say to a church or a business that I live across the street from you and your lighting is bothering me. So then that means that we must make a determination as to, like Josh was saying, what angles they should be, how much it should be as far as lighting is concerned. I can't see addressing the two issues separately.
Okay, thanks for that. I I think that the issue that we're talking about for electronic message boards is not a dark sky question in the same way that it is a nuisance that we're talking about as like a distraction for drivers or other potential hazards, a distraction for residents if we have, mixed uses. And so I think that for the next steps, it sounds like there is some support for considering a zoning text amendment that would add R1 to that list of zones in which we are okay with electronic message boards being allowed for non-residential uses. My preference would be that we keep that separate from the dark sky compliant text amendments, just because there is no it's not driven by the same things that drive the dark sky compliance ordinance updates that we're discussing. And so for me, they feel like separate issues.
That depends on how you orient the sign.
Yikes.
Was that section of the ordinance included in the notice for the public hearing? Did we already have a public hearing for that?
No, we had not.
Oh, okay, well then.
Yeah, I'm waiting on that until y'all are like comfortable, and then we'll public notice everything and then send it to council.
I think we're comfortable. Does anybody have feelings about signs that they haven't spoken yet? Or about lights? Sure. Okay, I said I would keep it brief and we kept it brief. Is that clear enough? Okay, great. Anything else on lighting?
No.
Oh, I didn't know you asked
Yeah,
me a
sorry.
question. I apologize. No, there's
I was
nothing
letting
else.
you catch up on your. Okay, very good. I think that's the end of our dark sky compliance discussion. Thanks everybody again for your input this evening. We're going to move along to item B under old business. That is the 915 West Michigan special use and site plan amendment. There won't be a public hearing this evening because we did have our public hearing in May. Josh, I'll turn it over to you for staff presentation.
Yeah, so I have made minor amendments to the staff report. We did end up getting a landscaping plan and a photometric plan. There were a few things I wanted to go over, but the changes from last month's review were highlighted in a light blue color. So going through, looking at the not the photometric plan, the landscaping plan, the applicant does propose 4 eastern red buds. Oh, did I not include that's not good.
Oh, it's in there.
It's in there?
yeah.
Okay.
It's on page 32 of the PDF.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Cool. Perfect. I was a little worried for a second. So, as a replacement for the green roof, the applicant has proposed 4 dwarf eastern redbuds. Now along First Avenue, this makes sense. You do have utilities, and overhead wires, and so planting anything that's going to grow, super tall, it just does not make sense there. However, over in the lawn, they proposed another eastern redbud, but I was wondering, and I was going to leave this to the planning commission's discretion as to whether or not this is suffice to deal with the removal of the green roof. Ultimately, I do not find that it will really meet the intent of the approval to have a green roof. And so having the eastern redbuds, they're not a very shady tree. They're not going to sink a lot of carbon. They're an ornamental tree. They're not as much a shady tree that's just beneficial overall to the public. So
Mhm.
I wanted the planning commission to kind of think about that. Regarding outdoor lighting, the photometric plan that they provided shows non-compliance along the northern property line, which is located, I don't know if you can see where my mouse is, it's located here. At the property line, lighting cannot exceed 0.5 foot candles, and the lighting does exceed 0.5 foot candles at the property line. So we would need an amendment to a new proposal for the photometric plan in terms of their lighting. Going back to the staff report, yeah, so I talked about the increase of landscaping. The other thing I wanted to go over was, last month's proposal for the relocation of trash, but also the screening of the parking lot. The parking lot, and again, it's okay if you all disagree with me, but The parking lot, the site originally did not comply with 122-684, which is what requires screening for parking lots. And the applicant never got approval from council to encroach within the right of way to screen the parking lot. And so in staff's opinion, they have never complied with this section because they weren't legally encroaching. As a result, I'm sorry?
Illegally.
They were illegally encroaching, yes. And so as a result, moving the dumpster enclosure as well would require them to remove parking spaces, which would create a non-compliance issue. And so I figured it makes the most sense to have them remove the planter boxes within the right of way. That will also allow easier access for trash removal services to access where the dumpster is presently. And wouldn't create a new nonconformity. It would just allow an existing nonconformity to continue. So,
Can I just, sorry, just a note of clarification on that point.
Yes.
So in the May packet that we reviewed,
yes,
one of the proposed conditions was pursuing a license for the encroachment of the planter box.
yes,
And so that recommendation is changing here.
yes,
The site plan hasn't changed regarding those planter boxes, but
No.
after kind of reviewing the history of the encroachment use,
mhm,
instead of pursuing a license to allow the encroachment of the planter boxes, your recommendation is just to have them removed from the site plan,
yes,
so that it's not encroaching at all.
yes,
Okay.
yes. And also as part of the site plan, they do show that they have a new tactile surface along at the what is it called? The crosswalk on Michigan Avenue. Um, and other than that, that was really, those were really the main points I wanted to highlight as part of this review. And again, council, if you all still want to see the screening, we can, require that as a condition as well. But at the same time, I just figured maybe this is something, maybe we could reconsider this because of trash removal. And then the main thing I wanted to talk about was, or you all to focus on was the removal of the green roof and the proposed landscaping.
Sure.
So, yeah, does anybody have any questions for me? And not, then we can, I can unmute the applicant.
Questions for staff before we hear from the applicant?
Yes. So the motion that we approved in May, the language was that we would postpone action until such time as the applicant has a complete and compliant site
Mhm.
plan. And there are items on this that aren't compliant,
Mhm.
excluding discretionary items. They're proposing wall packs, which are not downward directed or fully shielded and do not comply with our existing lighting standards.
Mhm.
So I guess my question is, why are we seeing this?
Um,
Maybe the applicant, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the applicant wanted to bring, wanted this to come forward. They did provide a lighting plan and a landscaping plan. So I wanted the planning commission to consider what was proposed. At the same time, the lighting that is proposed is actually what is existing. So they presently have that lighting. And it's a special use, so planning commission can require them to make it compliant, but, it is presently non-conforming.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Any other questions for staff? Very good. Let's hear from the applicant.
Can everyone hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Okay. Good evening, council or commission. I don't have anything further to add in terms of the photometric plan. We're relying on the architect who put together the plan to ensure that it's compliant. If what is on the building now does not meet compliance, we're happy to amend the photometric plan. Of course, that's the point of coming before this body, is to get approval for the intended photometrics. Our concern from a lighting standpoint is safety and security. Of course, we need to be within the bounds and confines of the ordinance that applies to exterior lighting. As it relates to the landscaping plan, the particular genus species of the tree is not, a big concern to us. The architect pointed out that we have very little wiggle room to deal with. We have utility line constraints. We just have a less surface area. But if there's a different type of tree that the planning commission wishes to see in lieu of the red buds, we're happy to go with that recommendation.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions for the applicant from commissioners? Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Phil, I'm gonna lean on you for help here. I welcome Michael to speak a lot despite him not being like present on the commission because we weren't voting on anything for the text amendment. You're my Robert's Rules helper. It seems like it might be inappropriate to welcome his input on things that we may be voting on this evening for deliberation. Is that right?
Yeah, because basically I just thought you was doing a courtesy.
For the lighting one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like less appropriate to be
Yeah.
courteous on this since we could potentially vote on a motion here. Okay, thanks, Michael. I hope you caught that. We can catch up afterwards if needed. So we have a compelling discussion here. From the conversation and the motion that were made in May, I went back and looked at how that was recorded in the minutes. And the motion that was recorded asked for a landscaping plan and a lighting plan, and we got that. But I think the question that was heavily discussed in May was, do we condition approval of the site plan on an administrative review of a compliant landscaping plan and lighting plan? And given that we do not have a compliant lighting plan, I think the same question kind of holds this evening. It is not compliant. So do we condition that on a staff approval of an otherwise, of a site plan that we might otherwise vote on, or do we have the same issue that we had in May? I'm interested in thoughts from other commissioners on that point.
In terms of the landscape plan, if our only issue is the species and we want to change it, I think we could do that as a condition of approval. And then the lighting plan is just something we'll have to discuss if we want to, under the special use discretion, have them update it to be compliant or not. So I think both of those can be discussions that we have and then be any condition of actual action that we take.
Okay, can you confirm that Eastern redbuds are on our approved tree species list?
You know off the top of your head, Bonnie? They're not in the right of way. They're like right along the right of way. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
And also the power.
Thought they were maybe in the right of way. I see now. Yeah, I mean, they have to be small, right? I think the trees that get planted there have to be small because of the utility constraints. And so, I mean, if like we're looking at an approved, a site plan that was approved in, was it 2021?
2021, yeah.
Several years ago. I'm thinking about if this came in front of Planning Commission for the first time and we saw a site that had utility constraints around the right of way. I think it would be commonplace for us to allow for no trees to be planted there and a fee in lieu, because the constraints of the utilities in the right of way would make it impossible to meet the street tree requirement. I tend to think that having a small tree is better than having no tree. And so I am a little bit species agnostic here. But knowing that we'll have to have something small, I don't have a problem with an Eastern redbud specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that the utility constraints make sense. One of the reasons why the applicant was given the license is because, we have the scoring and they provided the green roof.
Yeah.
That was why that was one of the reasons why they got the license. And so, you do have the utility constraints, on the west side of the site. However, where there is the lawn behind the bike parking, there is possibility for including a larger tree or a couple of medium-sized trees. That's how it appears on the plans. So,
Where?
right along, hold on, I'm going back.
But this map is,
Yes, we're the one eastern.
Oh, I see. Okay. Where that tree is also proposed to be a dwarf eastern red bud, but
Yes.
doesn't have the same constraints.
Yes.
I see.
might get roasted there too, if it's just the only one. So including a couple other trees there,
Hmm.
but not get.
Regarding, I wonder if we could spend a moment on the uh, removal of the planters here. I want to make sure that I just understand what you're asking, or sorry, what you're proposing in the staff recommendations, because the plan that we have does call for removal of the planters along Michigan Ave, right? And that ends right at the corner?
Yes.
Okay. So in your estimation, the condition that you're recommending here in the packet is, let me find it again, removing the planter boxes within the right of way. That is referring to like both the Michigan Ave planters and any of the planters along the cross street. What across
Along First Street
First? Thank you.
or First Ave.
Yeah. You're recommending removal of the planters along First as well.
Yes.
Okay.
They don't really do much to add to the greenery.
Well, historically, that was a there was another lane out to First there, right? So part of the intent here is to block. Is that true historically on the site?
There was a curb cut,
Yeah.
onto First, which,
There.
it's still there, yes.
Oh, it's there on the street side.
And it was required by the previous DPW director to close that curb cut
Mhm.
in accordance with the city engineering standards, but they haven't done it and it's still a requirement.
Okay.
So,
Is the to your point that it doesn't do much, one of the things that I think it does do, having kind of seen the original site back when this came before Planning Commission the first time, is it does like visually remove the appearance of any existing curb cut to enter this site from First.
Right.
Yeah.
But the requirement is to fill in the curb cut.
yes, it's conditioned to that the applicant shall remove the curb cut on First Avenue and construct a new curb along the frontage.
So having little planter boxes with some grass won't be necessary. We're filling in the curb cut anyway. Because it's not, I'm saying it doesn't do much to add to like the greenery.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, agreed. The getting the license because of the matrix that involves a green roof is interesting because it's not really a planning commission function.
Yeah, correct.
It's just that the green roof happens to be on the site plan that planning commission reviewed.
And the thing was never green.
Right, right.
Horrible,
Seems like they made an earnest effort and.
Yeah, agreed.
If it's none of our business, I really
Uh,
don't care.
Agreed. Yeah, the thing that I'm struggling with is like what planning commission's responsibility here is to, try to ensure a plan that is compliant with our landscaping standards, kind of making up for the lack of a green roof that was like more geared towards like a council matrix for licensure than it was ever part of the site plan. Because for me, I mean, I said my bit about like the street trees, I would rather have the eastern red buds along First than not have anything, right? And along along Michigan, I think we accept that we need to have a fee in lieu of street trees because of utility conflicts. You know, as far as landscaping goes, I can see an argument for a larger tree, something that isn't dwarf on the back lawn. And I have no problem with conditioning that just because I think that there is, you know, when you talk about the benefits of having, you know, vegetation here to break up some of the parking, you know, I think that having a larger tree there would be to the benefit, but I struggle with like what our responsibility is to have a generally green space when, you know, the green roof wasn't necessarily geared towards us to begin with. I don't have a problem with the planters, but you think that they would help with navigating around the trash enclosure?
Yes.
Okay. And have we seen like a turning plan?
No, we have not received a turning plan.
Okay. I don't know that I feel that compelled one way or the other about the planter boxes along First. Interested in thoughts from other commissioners?
As far as I'm concerned, they can go.
I think that visually, like eliminating the curb cut is helpful, but if we're already conditioning installation of an actual curb there, then no strong feelings. So the last question we have to answer then, Phil said they can go. I'm assuming if somebody disagreed that they would have spoken up there. Okay, moving along then. So I think the question then is just, you know, we seem to be of one mind of being okay with Eastern Redbuds on the west end of the site. We seem to be of one mind with asking for a tree that is not a dwarf species on the lawn on the southeast corner of the site. We seem to be generally of a consensus about the removal of the planter boxes along First. So I suppose the question then is, are we willing to take a vote on the site plan, given that the lighting plan that we've seen this evening is not compliant with our standards? I mean, I'll note, I said this in May and it still holds true. I am okay with that being an administrative approval, and I was okay with that in May. So I'm willing to take a vote on the site plan with that as a condition again this evening.
One other thing I did want to mention too is the potential visibility for the neighbor to the north. Is the planning commission concerned that it might impact visibility of pedestrians walking along the First Avenue sidewalk, or, you know, driving along First Avenue?
Sorry, that what would reduce visibility?
The Eastern Redbud, potentially.
Oh, we're talking about those in the easement?
Oh, no, it's just outside of the easement, but it's like right along the property line. You know, and then you have the sidewalk, and then you have, and when you're looking at the plans, you have a driveway right here. So would the planning commission be concerned about that? There is a fence that is there. But just wanted to mention that one thing before,
Oh, right. Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture of it on Google Maps right now, and I feel like a tree is not going to obscure that driveway any more than that fence already is. The driveway is pretty much, you can't see it at all because of that fence.
Yeah, I think the upside of the Eastern Redbud is that its capacity to obscure that view doesn't necessarily concern me. Any other thoughts?
Why didn't they, I guess it doesn't matter. They're gonna do that anyway. Because I was gonna ask, why didn't they use First Avenue to put a trash receptacle? Because it was already a curb cut there.
I'm sorry?
Why didn't they use Michigan First Avenue and have the dumpster where it would just drive straight in?
From my understanding, I was mentioned by the applicant that the commission wasn't interested in that.
Suppose they had to give her the curb cut anyway.
Yeah, I agree that it's, you know, without looking at my notes from 2021, in hindsight, it's hard to see why that curb cut would be closed for a planning function. But I know that Josh mentioned that Public Works, right, conditioned, who conditioned, was that the engineering review?
No, I believe it was a staff recommendation to close the curb cut, but also Bonnie could potentially speak. Bonnie could speak on that.
Mhm. Okay. Gotcha. I think that answers my questions. I'd be willing to entertain a motion.
Oh, would you?
I would. I would, and I should clarify, I think we had a lot of friendly amendments on the motion that we made in the last meeting. And so if I do intend to have some discussion of the motion before we go to a vote after a motion is made. Is there something that the commission feels we need to discuss further before we close discussion and move to voting?
Trying to remember all.
So the details of this motion that you're looking to entertain would be that we would approve this site plan provided that they amend their lighting plan and submit that. And then also, are we going to ask for them to reconsider the species of tree? Or I guess that's kind of the big questions here needed for the motion, right?
Yeah, so I do want to note that I don't have any control over what motion you might make, right? My point here procedurally is just that it seems we're at the end of discussion, and so I wanted to move from the discussion to the votes. We can only vote on motions that are made, so whoever feels inclined to make a motion may do so. Personally, for my vote, I was okay with requiring the lighting plan for administrative approval in May. So I'm happy with voting on the site plan, just requiring the lighting plan for administrative approval now. I don't have a problem with the eastern redbuds that are presented on the site plan as, you know, a deciduous tree. Staff's recommendation for the special use permit requires or conditions that the applicant shall provide 2 additional medium-sized deciduous trees. I think that is for the lawn on the east side that kind of covers the fact that there is only one dwarf tree there now. And so for you know, my personal opinion on this is I'm okay with the special use recommendation as presented by staff in our packet, given condition 1. If that's the motion that you wish to make, then now would be a good time.
Yeah, I think that that's reasonable. I'll make a motion to approve the site plan based off of staff's recommendations of regarding the trees and also with a expectation that they will propose a amended lighting plan that is within compliance for staff approval. Is that
Oh,
really in line with
I think
you can read from on page 53.
53?
well, and also I do think just to be clear, that was a motion. Is there a second for that motion, or do we want to start that motion over? Not hearing a
Give
second.
me a do-over.
Not hearing this. Not hearing a second. That initial motion fails. We will entertain a new motion. If you could, we want to start with the special use before we move to the site plan. And you can read, if you're okay with staff's recommendations, verbatim the language of the special use, just starting with I move that Planning Commission approve.
Thanks. I motion based off the staff recommendation that we approve with conditions the amendments to the special use permit for marijuana retailer use at 915 West Michigan Avenue. The following findings and conditions. Finding the applicant is substantially in compliance with section 122-324. This application's specific use is compliant with 122-538. Conditions, the applicant shall plant 2 additional medium-sized deciduous trees.
Support.
We have a motion by Greg, support by Phil. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Wait, can I
Just
just?
friendly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you know
go
what? I
first.
did say we were going to discuss it. Let's not get a roll call vote quite yet. Discussion on the motion on the table. Amanda, I think you were first, and then we'll jump to Michelle.
Just what we already talked about, adding in the administrative approval of lighting plan.
That I think is already in condition 3 on the site plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the condition for the medium-sized deciduous tree, can we just indicate that it should come from the list of recommended tree species that's provided by the city? So they don't go rogue.
But it's on private.
We do
I
just,
know.
yeah, we do just have like a list of like the street trees.
Yes,
You're okay with that?
pulling from that list,
Okay.
so they don't end up with 2 invasives randomly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be friendly, to me.
Friendly
Second
amendment.
has to approve it as well.
Okay. Does your second stand
Yeah,
with the friendly amendment?
yeah. It can only be friendly.
Very good. Any more discussion on the motion on the table? Okay, so the motion now is amended to match the text in the packet with the condition that the applicant shall plant 2 additional medium-sized deciduous trees from the acceptable street trees list from the city.
Yeah.
Very good. Now can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yeah, Commissioner Dunwoody,
Support.
Commissioner Hollyfield,
Support.
Commissioner Smith,
Support.
Commissioner Shear, Commissioner Jones Chance,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin, Commissioner Woodring.
Or,
Very good. Motion carries. That brings us to the staff recommendation for the site plan. A motion would be in order.
I motion to follow staff's recommendations for the site plan to approve the conditions of the site plan for 915 West Michigan Avenue with the following findings and conditions. Findings: the application substantially complies with 122-311. Conditions: the applicant shall provide tactile warning surfaces on the sidewalk leading to the crosswalk along West Michigan and First Avenue. The applicant shall remove the curb cut on First Avenue and construct a new curb along the frontage. The applicant shall submit a lighting plan for administrative approval conforming to the provisions of 122-609, provide dark sky compliant lighting features. The applicant shall remove the planter boxes within the right-of-way. The applicant shall install screening along the entire rear of the property in compliance with 122-634, and the applicant shall receive all necessary approvals from the necessary departments and other required agencies.
Support.
We have a motion by Greg, support by Phil. I'll again welcome discussion from commissioners on the motion currently on the floor before we move to a vote. Is there anything that hasn't been discussed for the site plan? Hearing none, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yeah. Commissioner Dunwoody,
Support?
Commissioner Hollyfield,
Support.
Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Shear,
Support.
Commissioner Jones Chance,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Support.
Commissioner Woodring.
Or,
Passes unanimously.
Very good, thank you. That concludes our business at 915 West Michigan. We will move to the capital improvement plan. Bonnie, if you're ready.
Good evening, Planning Commission.
Evening.
I believe we went over most of the actual projects last time. The question was really about the resolution. I'm here, of course, happy to answer a question about the projects or about the resolution. But if you'd like me to represent, I'm happy to go through it all again. I'd be equally as happy not to, so please let me know your preference.
Do we have any questions about specific projects? We'll start there. I think we discussed those mostly in May. Phil, you weren't here for that, so now's your chance.
No, I'm not doing that.
You can just give me a call afterwards.
On the resolution then.
I just have one quick question. So
Yeah.
I see that the sidewalk along the north side of Prospect Park is included in there. What about the one that goes through the park that just goes from paved to dirt?
So we are doing the sidewalk along the north side of Prospect Park with CDBG funds in order to trigger an environmental review so that we can get a little bit more historical information about Prospect Park. So Prospect Park had previously been used as a cemetery. So before we make any great plans or do any great budgets, we want to know what we're going to be getting into. And so triggering that environmental review first so that we can sort of clear the path for any sort of future improvements, which may include, of course, the path for accessibility, and the playground, which also needs fast accessibility improvements.
Great, glad I asked.
And that particular sidewalk also includes completing the sidewalk ramps at the corner with those.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Are any of those vacant lots for sale?
There's one vacant lot that is for sale currently. I believe that is 875 Madison, 326, it's either Madison or Monroe, I'm sorry. The other few on the list, so 326 East Michigan, that is currently under option. I think I finally took off 206 North Washington. The other one that might be on there catching your eye on East Michigan is I want to say 706 West Michigan, not East Michigan. Sorry, I'm going up to my list.
By the vet.
Yeah, it's across the street from the vet. It's got like a really big hill behind it. We would love for somebody to buy it. We are tired of mowing it. But it hasn't been listed with a realtor or broker at this time. Other ones that might be fun and interesting. That's 731 West Michigan, I'm sorry, and 875 Monroe. Yeah, that covers the interesting ones. Interesting to me, but
Any other questions on the capital improvement plan? Just so I understand procedurally, so we didn't have a motion, but I know there was some discussion about what the Planning Enabling Act required of Planning Commission regarding the capital improvement plan. Can I get some background just to know what's compelling us here?
the Planning Enabling Act.
Okay.
Yeah, so the charter doesn't require that planning commission make a recommendation. The state act does. Council has actually already adopted the capital improvement plan part of the budget. So this is a bit of a formality. I understand.
Oh, yeah.
But this is all.
Not next year.
Of the resource allocation plan. So in a sense, if it makes you feel better, the big capital improvement plan was already adopted back in 2024, 2025. That does not absolve you of the responsibility of me visiting you, kind of like the Ghost of Christmas Past, at least once per year.
That's so special.
But yes, so it is the Planning Enabling Act that is compelling you tonight and in the future.
Very good. Thanks.
I am happy. We are actually taking a look at how to better time some of the budget items, because it does seem, even to staff, as though it's all done at a rush in May. I would be absolutely thrilled if you guys wanted to see it a little bit earlier, or if you guys wanted to just have a work session and take a look at stuff. I always threaten people with a 3-hour PowerPoint. Please know that's not a threat. That is a promise, or vice versa. However you choose to take it. But happy to speak at length, as long as you are not my third night meeting in a week.
I do have one question.
Please.
Capital improvement, but how do you determine the costs of the items on the plan?
With some of them, I shouldn't lean on that. Depending upon how far off in the future the project is, we either use engineers' estimates or actual quotes or ballpark figures. So we know that we've been talking about the Frog Island parking lot, just a simple mill and overlay. Well, not just a simple mill and overlay, I'm sorry, a reconstruct, but without major changes, would be in the ballpark of about $1 million. That could be, when we go out to bid, that could be 1.25, that could be 750, that could be bang on $1 million. We don't actually know the actual prices until we've gone out to bid and gotten the precise market at that precise time.
So is the 1 million an engineer's estimate?
Yes.
Okay.
But based on concept plans, not actual topo, engineering, geotechnical, digging into the dirt and actually seeing what's there.
Okay.
I believe you might have mentioned this in the last meeting, but just to remind me, the dam removal is slated to begin next year.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we have a handy resolution in front of us this evening.
Resolution number 2025-01. Oh, the first one. Resolved by the Planning Commission of the City of Ypsilanti. Whereas the City of Ypsilanti has developed a capital improvement plan for fiscal years 24 and 25 through 2031 and 32, outlining the city's anticipated capital projects and major investments in infrastructure, facilities, and equipment. And let's read the remainder of that into the record here. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council consider the approved capital improvement plan in conjunction with the annual budgeting process and ongoing capital planning decisions. And I so move.
Motion by Brian, second by Michelle. We get a roll call vote?
Commissioner Dunwoody,
Yes.
Commissioner Hollyfield,
Support.
Commissioner Smith,
Or
Commissioner Shear,
Support.
Commissioner Jones Chant,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin, Commissioner Woodring.
Or
All right, it passes unanimously.
Thanks for your patience tonight, Bon. Okay, that is the last of our items under old business. We'll move to new business. We have the reappointment of Joe Montgomery on Motorized Committee. I think that's the last page of the packet.
Move to approve.
Or
I don't think we need to read all this, do we?
Just adopt a
That
resolution.
gets us nuts.
Wait, so who was the,
I move that we adopt resolution number 2025-02.
or
We have a motion by Brian, support by Amanda.
all right,
Can we get a roll call vote?
Commissioner Dunwoody,
Yes.
Commissioner Hollyfield,
Support.
Commissioner Smith,
yes.
Commissioner Shear,
Support.
Commissioner Jones Chant.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Support.
Commissioner Woodring.
or
All right, he's been appointed.
Very good. Are we doing resolutions for appointments to the non-motorized committee now?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's fancy.
It certainly is. Now's as good a time as any to start, right?
Yes.
Okay. There is one more item under old business that is officer elections. I took a couple of notes because I famously flub the officer elections every year. I want to make sure that we're in agreement on the proceedings for officer elections, just so everybody has an opportunity here. We're going to start by taking nominations from the floor for the chair first, and then voting on those nominations for the chair. Then we will proceed to take nominations for the vice chair and then vote on the vice chair. While nominations are open, any member may nominate a commissioner to serve as an officer. No seconding of these nominations is necessary. A member can be nominated for multiple positions for chair and vice chair, but we will do those in order. A member can't nominate more than one person for an officer role. Self-nominations are allowed, and the nominee must indicate their willingness to fulfill the role they are nominated for. Those are the rules for presenting nominations when they are opened. After nominations are included, we will close the nominations and proceed to a vote. For those votes, I will conduct a voice vote in order of the nominations. Members must vote affirmatively for their preferred candidate or negatively for others. The candidate with the majority vote wins. In the event of more than two nominees, I'm going to call for a vote by roll call in which the plurality vote getter will get elected to the office. Did I miss anything from what we discussed as it relates to Robert's rules for the vote?
That's good.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions on how we're going to proceed with the officer elections? Okay, very good. I'm going to open the floor for nominations for chair. I would like to start by nominating Commissioner Jones Chance to be chair. Jones Chance.
Yes, sir.
Will you accept that nomination?
Oh, yeah.
Are there any other nominations for chair? Hearing none.
Whoa.
No.
Nominate.
3 times.
I have to
Commissioner
ask
Dunwoody.
3 times, do I not?
That's 3 times.
We have another nomination.
Yes, I nominate Commissioner Dunwoody.
I will reject the nomination. Thank you. Any other nominations? Any final nominations? Any remaining nominations? I'm running out of adjectives. We'll move to a vote on the chair. We have one nomination for Commissioner Jones' chance to be chair. Can we get a roll call vote?
Yeah. Commissioner Dunwoody,
Support.
Commissioner Hollyfield, Commissioner Smith,
Support.
Commissioner Shear,
Support.
Commissioner Jones Chance,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin, Commissioner Woodring.
Or
Very good. Congratulations. We next have nominations for vice chair. I will open the floor for nominations. Crickets. I would nominate myself for vice chair. And I accept my nomination for vice chair. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Second chance nominations for vice chair. Final chance nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate Davis Jr.
Commissioner Davis Jr. has.
We can't accept it because he's not here
How does that work if he's not here to accept?
in our bylaws.
I,
Well, that's cute. He can see that I said it and then whatever.
Closing the floor for nominations for vice chair. I said if there were two or more members, we'd go to a voice vote for. So as it is, we're going to do a roll call vote affirmatively for preferred candidates and negatively for others in the order of nominations. So we will start with the nomination of myself for vice chair. Can we go to roll call vote?
Commissioner Dunwoody,
Support?
Commissioner Hollyfield, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Shear,
Support.
Commissioner Jones Chance,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin, Commissioner Woodring.
or
All right.
Thanks all. Having a vice chair, I'm not going to take a vote for the other nomination. But it'll be in the record that you gave Mike the thumbs up. Okay, I think that was the first time I haven't messed up the rules for the officer elections before. There is one more thing I want to add before we return to our second public comment of the evening. That was something that we talked about adding to future business when we met in May, but ran out of time to discuss in earnest. And that is some sort of reporting structure to Planning Commission on site plan conditions after the fact. So I think that this was brought up largely around the West Michigan site plan that we discussed at that time. Because we tend to make a lot of conditions. And I think one of the things that has popped up a handful of times already this year is us finding out that conditions on earlier site plans were never enforced. And so I am interested in figuring out, we do have old business in our agenda each meeting, and I think it would constitute old business to discuss what the enforcement or the checking of any site plan conditions look like after a certain amount of time. I don't know how capable staff feels of tracking down some site plan conditions after the fact, but I think there already is an enforcement discussion for those conditions. So I think I'm just asking that we be kept in the loop. I don't know if we want to put a specific timeline on that. Would that make it easier for you of saying like a year out from a site plan approval, we want to know how those conditions stand? Or is it easier if it is not tied to a calendar?
Yeah, I mean, I already keep track of all that. So like I have a folder, essentially it's called active projects, where I tell people if I ever get hit by a bus, everything that you need to know about what I've been doing is right here in this this document. So I do already keep track of it. I can I can provide something every quarter, by yearly. Overall it's not like it's overly onerous because I already keep track of all of it. So
Okay, so for the rest of the commission then, do we want to indicate, this doesn't need to be a bylaw, right? It shouldn't be a bylaw. It'll just be kind of operating procedure. But the direction that we're giving to staff, do we want a certain amount of time, like after which there's been an opportunity for the site plan to become compliant, but maybe it's not so long that everybody's forgotten what we conditioned.
Well, we have an expiration date that can, so basically, if Josh comes and tells us, oh, these are the projects that satisfied all their conditions as an update, or these are the projects that expired without satisfying those conditions, those are like the two good things that it'd be nice
Mhm.
to know.
Yeah,
Not like constant updates about where everyone is, right?
I can do that. Yeah.
Okay, so that'll become a regular part of old business on future agenda. Does anybody else have anything they want to add?
I have a question.
Yeah.
On what's the relationship between completing site plan conditions and getting a certificate of occupancy?
I'm sorry.
What is the relationship between completing site plan conditions
Mhm.
and getting a certificate of occupancy?
If they don't complete site plan conditions, if they have, constructed the building and the building is meeting all building code requirements, they would get a temporary certificate of occupancy, I believe. But they wouldn't get their certificate of compliance, essentially. Once they address all of those conditions of, the planning commission conditions, then they get their certificate of compliance, but a permanent C of O cannot be issued unless they have that certificate of compliance.
So is the question here how we keep a record of this process, or do we really think that projects are getting completed and C of Os are being issued and all site plan conditions have not been met?
I don't think we thought that before the beginning of this year, but I think we've seen several instances in which we find these unmet conditions from site plan reviews. They're often unrelated to the occupancy of the building, but relating to the broader site. And so to answer your question directly, I think staff is already tracking that. I'm just asking that Planning Commission be kept in the loop.
Do temp Cs of O have like a set timeline for how long they're good for, or can you make it up for every project?
It's ultimately not my purview. Ultimately, building department or the director.
But if it's a temp because of site plan conditions, wouldn't you be the one determining that it's a temp and not a permanent? Because you're the one administering the site plan conditions?
It's not my purview.
So how does building department know to issue a temp instead of a permanent? You're not there directing them.
Ultimately, depending on before the certificate is issued, I am in regular communication with my boss regarding, where things are in terms of their site plans. We have not issued a permanent C of O, for a property that hasn't completed all. Well, let me backtrack on that. Since I have been here, we have not issued a permanent C of O for a property that hasn't completed their site plan conditions. Now, for example, I'm thinking of like Clark Road, for example, they got their temporary C of Os, but they still haven't been granted a permanent one because they haven't gotten their official approval from our engineers. So
So is the temp good like forever, or does that expire too? That's what I'm,
the temporary expires. It's depends,
and it gets set per project.
yes,
Got it.
but I don't set it. I don't
Right,
set that.
I
The
get
building department or my boss sets that.
If a property is out of compliance and it's brought to us, is there anything actionable we could do at that point, or is it just us being aware that they're out of compliance?
It's Planning Commission would not be responsible for the enforcement.
Right.
And like that doesn't change here. Beyond our ability to maybe influence staff towards enforcement.
It would also help us understand if things are unenforceable and therefore things we should consider differently.
Yeah, I do wonder if something were unenforceable, whether it would show up in what you track typically.
Um, I've not had issues with things being unenforceable.
Yeah, okay.
Ultimately, it's like when somebody applies for something, they are essentially agreeing, to, because they want to do a certain use or build something, they're agreeing to essentially do that based on the conditions of approval from the planning commission. Obviously they can, if they really don't disagree, they can contest it. But nobody has contested these conditions of approval that I've received. And I've only been here for a year and a half, but I've not ran into that issue. So,
I think in general, we should try very hard to issue as few conditional approvals as we can, just because of the long history of a lot of essentially site plan approvals falling onto staff and then us not knowing what's going on. So we set a precedent here when an applicant comes before us, and if we're conditioning it on them completing their site plan instead of just conditioning on them tweaking it based on items of discretion that we have that we're enabled to ask them for, like, we're just going to keep getting applicants before us begging to be on the meeting without a complete application. And then it's just falling to staff. And I'm speaking from personal experience, like it should be us that's looking at the complete site plans and not passing it along to staff to juggle with among the 1,000 other things you have to do. And that just has to be holding them accountable and postponing action if it's not complete. And if we can like get in the habit of doing that, then applicants will realize, okay, I need to have an actual complete application before I get to the planning commission.
Agreed.
I mean, ultimately, it is a condition, it is required, as part of, it is mentioned on the site plan application that you need to have a complete application. Now, there is discretion, from the planner to kind of determine what is and is not a complete application. There are often times that people have, proposed a use in an existing structure and they've not provided a photometric plan or lighting or a landscaping plan because, because they haven't, because they didn't need it for that application. So there is discretion, but it is ultimately a requirement to have a complete site plan. So there is value in, there's value in terms of moving people along and getting them through the process, by having administrative approvals, but there's also value in having the planning commission approve, seeing exactly what is being proposed and approving that. So.
Very good. Any other thoughts on the old business request? Very good. Item 10 on the agenda is public comment. A motion would be in order to open that public
So
comment.
moved.
Motion by Brian, support by Amanda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Seeing nobody in the room, seeing nobody on Zoom, a motion would be in order to close the public comment.
So moved.
Motion by Brian, support by Amanda. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Motion by Michelle, support by Brian. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.
9:01, so close.
9:01.
Not bad
Great.
for a late start.